Hey there, viewers, and welcome into a new series here at War Games Central. I'm Zach Burley, bringing you Inferno, Guelphs, and the Ghibellines vie for Tuscany, which is the newest addition in Volko Runke's Levy Campaign Series. This time he teamed up with Enrico Acerbe to produce this game. You've already seen Nevsky, and then on my channel, Almoravid. If you want to go check out more of that, you can look on the channel. This one will take place in Tuscany region in Italy. Similar time period to the other games, but much different setting. So I've already played the introductory scenario, the first scenario. What I have set up here is scenario C, which is Santa Fior Oscura, which is a short scenario, 3 turns. It says, with Tuscany heating up, the Hohenstaufen king of Sicily sends his cousin, Count Giordano, with German knights to Siena, as the Guelphs back fresh rebellions in the Maremma region. And it says that this short scenario focuses on quashing rebels south of Siena and the Guelph player in a harassing role. So there's a couple of things that are different about this one as opposed to Nevsky and Almoravid. And the biggest ones are going to be some of the hallmarks of previous previous editions of this series, which is the weather and the terrain. So as you can look at this very multicolored turn track up here, whereas in Nevsky it was like winter, and then like spring, summer, winter, spring, summer. It was very much broken up like that. This one has only 2 winter turns in the entire game. So much different. It's kind of like that in Almoravid because they're much more southern regions, but this one will have a lot more cards being played because you're going to have 7, 6, 7, 4, 7, 6, 7, 4. So you're going to get into playing a lot more cards. It can be a lot more moving than in Nevsky, which is a bit more limited due to the weather. The big difference is terrain. There are only two kinds of movement. Because there is naval movement, but only Pisa can do it, and we're not going to see that, I don't think, in this playthrough. We might, but pretty much it's just going to be by these 2 ways, which are roads, the gray lines, and tracks, the brown lines. The only difference between those is that you get a bonus for traveling on roads. So let's say Cole here is unladen and is traveling by road. He has 2 actions that he can take, one of which is a march. So if he wanted to march normally, it would just be 1 action. But if he's unladen, his first action, marching by road, is free. So this would take none, and then 1, 2, or none, 1, and then he could come down here. He could then, forage here and then move again. So it means you can move faster, which makes sense. You have to remember that this was one of, if not the most wealthy regions in the world at the time. So it's not an outpost or a frontier like Nevsky, or a region of conflict like that of Spain. This is very much conflict between or inside of a nation somewhat, whereas Nevsky and Almoravid were clashes relating to religion and nationality, all that stuff. This one is much more street to street, neighbor to neighbor, much more personal combat that's going on here. So those 2 affect a lot of things. Also the fact that there's only carts and ships. Ships only affect Pisa, though. They're the only ones that can have ships. So really it's just carts is all you got, which pares that down a lot. You don't got to think as much about, well, I got to carry boats and ships, and then when I'm moving I can only keep one provender at a time because I've only got one boat and one sled or whatever. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's just carts. So that simplifies that aspect down a little bit, for better or for worse. I think that the Nevsky series, I always thought that it was like George B. McClellan simulator, where what you would do is you would just manage logistics, supply, never have enough men, always worried about that, and but you would never actually fight because by the time you got to where you were going, you were out of supply or out of men, which was fine. I very much liked that that puzzle. That didn't mean that that's what the game was. That meant I was bad at the game, and that's what happened in it because I was bad at it. So this one is very much different in that there's less to worry about for logistics, but there's also a lot more ways to get provender because you're going to be in not winter for so much longer. It's easier to pick that stuff up. Also, coin has a big difference in this one. In past games, coin was a little bit harder to get a hold of. In this one, it's a lot easier, and you use it a lot more. You use it a lot, actually. So that's going to give you a different twist to things. I also find that these cylinders and service markers move a lot more in this one than in past, and that's because of something I'll explain in a moment. On the board, though, just to explain what's going on in this scenario and then what goes on in this game in general, this is kind of like Almoravid's Politics, where you would be fighting against someone, and then in the rear you've got a jihad, and you're like having to battle with that as well as your enemy that's in the field. This one's similar to that, except it's just taken up a notch. Like they were like, that was fun, let's do it like 50 times more. This game, when you're playing it, is like just explosions everywhere. Like you do one thing and then like the whole board erupts, and it is just absolutely insane. It's crazy. Like playing Nevsky, that's a very limited game in my opinion. That one is much tighter, especially when in contrast with this one. This one, you're just dropping bombs everywhere, and just it is pure insanity. Not in a bad way. It's just so much more open and fluid than Almoravid, and especially Nevsky, which I think is what they were going for. So what am I talking about? How does it happen? Well, on the board right now, we've got a couple of markers that'll be familiar to you if you know the series. We have our normal lords, and then we have these ravaged markers, which is just you going around and burning everything, and you're going to extract resources from the land to feed your armies, and then you're going to leave everything else in ruin. Those will come back during certain periods of the game, so they're not permanent. But then you have these ruin markers, which basically you would go into a town, a city, castle, and you would when you ransacked it, you would destroy the walls and turn it into a position that could not be held in the future, as a show of strength, and also as a show of defense as well, because you didn't want to have to go back there and then fight up those same walls again. So those can also be rebuilt, but you'll notice here these two locations are ruined. It grants you half a victory point, so it's not quite the same as capturing it outright, like through a surrender, because you would get the full victory points, but this gives you half. So it's kind of like a trade-off. Sometimes you don't have a choice, you're going to have to storm, so you'll have to ruin it, and then other times you just want to get it over with, you want to get past here, you want to ruin it. And sometimes, like, I'm going to go for it because I don't want to have to fight this place again. I'm just going to ruin it, take my half victory point. That can be especially painful when you're attacking places that are worth 2 and 3, because you're going from losing half a victory point to losing a 1.5 or 2.5 points. So you want to balance it there, but obviously sometimes you won't have the choice. The big thing are these victory point markers, which operate the same way in that they're assigned by the size of a place. So castles are 1, towns are 2, and cities are 3. They'll give you that number of victory points. They're very different. Like you're looking at the map here, and you can see there's this green dotted line, and the purple markers are all largely way down here, but the forces are not even in that half. How the heck did they get down there and do that? Is that something that happened in the game before then? Yes and no. An army didn't go down there and conquer those areas. They revolted against the Ghibellines. So that's the big twist in this game, is this treachery. And it is crazy because, like, let's say that Colle comes over here to, Poggio Benizio, and recaptures this location. He's then going to cause revolt in Ghibelline territory, which is crazy because, like, that's a 2-size location. So you're going to roll, if I'm doing it correctly, you're going to roll on the revolt table twice, which is going to likely cause 2 locations to switch sides. And then you're going to get 2 treachery cards, if I'm doing it right. I don't know if you do one or the other, but I think you get both. I'll double check in the future, but
like what'll happen is this is the 2-point swing normally. You'll come over here, take this back, you get 2 points. Well, it's a 4-point swing because the Ghibellines lose 2, you gain 2. Okay, 4-point swing. Well, now because you captured a 2 place, let's see, this Massa Marittima will flip, and then also Pisa will flip. So that's 3, 2, 5 plus the 4 you already had. It's a 9-point swing right there, and you got 2 treachery cards, which are going to help you later on. So like, it is just massive. It's just dropping bombs everywhere. It's pure chaos, and the state of the board will change so much. Like this scenario basically isn't even fighting each other; it's fighting yourself. The Ghibellines are going to go down here and try and quell what they've got going on in the south to a certain extent. So that you'll understand a little bit more as the game evolves how that affects things. But it's crazy. The other part is Call to Arms, which is a new feature in the series, and it will feature in this one. It's a limited Call to Arms, so normally during the game you would get to do a Call to Arms by drawing a card with war on it, like this. And that means that you can do a Call to Arms, and that doesn't apply to you only. Let's say the Guelphs do it, they can do a Call to Arms, and then automatically the Ghibellines get to do one because I'm calling up my troops. Well, the enemy is calling up their troops. We got to do it too. So in this scenario, only the Ghibellines will get to do it. So that'll be interesting. But normally, if you were playing the full length scenario or one of the scenarios that has unlimited Call to Arms, or it's not limited on the Call to Arms, it would be very different. So that's pretty much, I think, everything that's different about this one. There's a few little things in the Call to Arms. The forces are a little bit different in that you have these new green units, which kind of replace some of the unique ones that were in each of the other 2 series. You still have militia, you still have light horse, you still have men-at-arms. You have kind of like serfs. Knights still exist, so the way the forces are divided up, as was in Almoravid, I'm going to have to figure that out as I play and be like, yeah, this is a good guy on his own. This guy is not very good, but he needs vassals, so on and so forth. The feeding is the same. It's still 6 every 6, so 7 means you got to feed twice. What is it? I guess 12 would mean 13. Would mean you have to eat twice. So that's still the same. Bypass remains from Almoravid. I don't think that was a Nevsky, and I don't think it was added retrospectively. So yeah, it's kind of pared down on one side and expanded on the other. So basically what I'm going to do is we're going to draw the Arts of War cards like you would normally. That will be for capabilities, I think. I want to make sure that you do that in this scenario. But we'll draw the Arts of War card, and then we will hop in with the Levy phase, which is unchanged until we get to the Call to Arms. And I'll try and walk you through that to get you to, a preview of exactly what the heck is different about that and how it can very drastically change your game. So overall, just from the first play, I've enjoyed this, but hopefully we can show off some of the reasons why with this series. Okay, we're going to draw the 2 opening Arts of War card. At first, I've got to grab the assets for Cole, but it gives me an opportunity to explain one of the other differences. There are 12 lords in this game, I think, and 6 of them are podestas, which is Italian. I think it's literally mayor, which is a little bit different, and they're not an individual person, whereas in the past everyone was, they had a name and they were an individual. In this one, they'll be an elected, or I don't know if it's elected necessarily, a chosen mayor of a town, usually an outsider, and they will lead the forces from that city and the various vassals. Kind of like a general for hire, I guess, a little bit. But that means that they can be mustered multiple times, much quicker than normal vassals would be, because if one of these mayors is defeated in combat, they can just appoint another one. It also means that you can do some special things like still levying or raising one of these podestas even if they're besieged. I know that's true for the leading Firenze and Siena cities. I don't know if that's true for the other ones, the minor cities in these regions, but definitely like if Siena is besieged, Siena can still, the podesta of Siena, which is one of these mats, can still be raised. So that's a little bit different as well, and you'll kind of get a feel for that hopefully through this. So our two, we only have one lord apiece. We have the podesta of Colle, who has very weak forces. Cavalieri, these are Armigieri, and then a militia. So very, very light. He has some vassals he can supplement his forces with, but very light. And then Count Giordano, who has 3 Ritter, which are knights. The Cavalieri are like Italian knights. They're just not the professional knight class that the Ritter are, so they're not quite as good, but they're still pretty good. Better than, you know, light horse or these tan units. But a much larger force, as you can see here, he's already at 7 to start with. So he's got to feed twice, which there are markers in this one for that. I don't know if there were in Almirava. There were not in Nevsky. But he's got to feed twice already because he's already over the limit. And he's got some forces he can bring up with him. I feel like in this one you're going to be eating a lot more because you're going to have bigger forces. But that's also because food's more plentiful. So those are the two. Firenze and Siena are both available for levy, and Provenzano is also available for levy to start off with. So let's go ahead and draw these two capabilities for the Guelph first. So as always, you start off with 2 cards, and you'll go for the capabilities first, which are the ones on the bottom. So this can go to any lord. It's La Cavallata. It says, this lord may pay 1 provender to use entire command to ravage adjacent locale, not at unbesieged enemy lords. So long range raiding, basically. Now, of course, you don't have multiple people. I'm going to put them both under the same guy. The other one, War Engineers. This one is interesting. This lord's siege adds marker to any size stronghold. Besieged, he can use his entire command to reduce 1 siege there. So if he's besieged, he can reduce the amount of siege markers, and then let's say Colle goes to attack Poggio Bonizio here, which is a size 2 city. Normally he wouldn't be able to add siege markers because he doesn't have enough troops to thoroughly surround the city. With his war engineers, he will be able to do that. So that'll be good for jumping straight out and attacking this location. Now, one of the rules for this scenario is that the Ghibellines can't cross the dotted line until the Guelphs place a siege or ravage marker. So it's up to the Guelphs whether or not they have to defend. So they'll probably hop up here and attack that to start off with. So those two are going to go under that map. I don't know if you can see it or not. So now 2 for the Ghibellines. And we got the Balistieri, which is very good. Up to 3 of this lord's Armigieri have crossbows ×1, -2 to target armor, and you select targets in storm defense. So that's really good because if you're, you can pick off who you want, and it's also 1 times crossbow. So you're going to be pretty good in that instance. This is a very good card. And this is Balestra Grossa, which is this lord's men-at-arms in storm have crossbows ×1.5, -2 to target armor. That selects targets if defending. So there's a lot of selecting targets in this one. I think that was some of that in Almoravid, but there's a lot of that in this one I've seen. So men-at-arms storms have half, regardless of whether you're attacking or defending, and -2 to target armor. So that one is good for him. But the other one, the Balistieri, isn't particularly good because he can only get 1 Armigieri from his vassals. So that will be probably one that they kick out and they get rid of. I don't know if they'll be able to get it back. I don't think you shuffle. But regardless, that one's not particularly useful under this particular lord. Cool. So let's grab this sequence of play here. And Arts of War first, you can pay to extend service markers. We're not going to do that yet. Disband does not apply on the first one. And then muster. Guelph and Ghibelline lords at unbesieged friendly locales may take lordship actions as follows, where you can bring in vassals, assets, or readied lords. Now, this means more for the Guelphs, this segment, because they don't have a call to arms. The only guy that they can even think about bringing in at this point is Firenze. Let's see, he has a service of 3, so that would put him out there as well. Yeah, they're only going to get 4 total lords, and we're going to have less to worry about. I just wondered if maybe I would wait a turn, take Poggio Bonizio with his war engineers on his own, and then bring in Firenze and have him come down to Siena. It's only a 3-turn scenario, though, so you don't want to lose it. So, okay, I'll try and bring him in. So we're going to use Lordship, which is the number here, to take these actions in muster. So one of the actions is going to be to try and roll in Firenze. Firenze is a fealty of 5, very high fealty. That means on a roll of 5 or less, he'll enter the game at his seat. So it's a 4. Firenze will muster in Firenze. He'll enter play, and he has 2 cavalry, 2 men-at-arms, and then some decent vassal forces, nothing crazy. But he comes with 2 coin. So that's the thing. These podestas cost more to keep in the game, but they also can tax for more. So when you tax, you get 2 coins with podestas, and it costs 2 to extend their service. So I think that the worry about service will be less. I don't know. I haven't played a scenario long enough to figure out if that's true or not. I'm not going to add his stuff just yet. I'll do that off camera. And then he's still got another point. He has 1 card at the moment. He's not really going to need to carry around 2, I don't think, because unless he really musters here, I think the other one will be, let's see, that's 3. So that would take him up to 6. So yeah, this turn he's going to bring up this 1 vassal, which is Antonio Incontri, which is Volterra Exiles. So one of the things Volko was talking about in his video is how often when one side would go over and take over another city, they would kick out all of the sympathizers of the other side. And so those exiles would often go to the opposition and offer their services. So that is replicated here somewhat. So he's going to get 2 armigieri and 1 light horse. Let me double check. Yeah, a light horse. So that takes him up to 6. So he's only going to feed 1 each time. And he won't have to worry about getting another cart this turn because he will only need to feed once, and we don't have to worry about being attacked either. So should be pretty easy for him. So that's his 2 lordships spent. Then we'll go over to the other side. They've got their call to arms, so they're not too pressed about this because they'll be able to immediately muster Siena and the Comune, which I haven't explained yet. But so I'm not sure if they'll do some stuff for themselves. They have 3 carts, so they're pretty good there. And right now they're at 7. They can go up to 11, I guess. I'm not sure if it's 12 or 11 because it's 6. And the next threshold is 12, I guess. But anyways, I think they could bring in both of these. That would be 6, so I don't think they could do both. But they're going to bring in this vassal, which is the Hohenstaufen Royal Naples. So 1 cavalieri, 1 armigieri, and 1 militia. So there's going to be a lot of forces here for them to deal with. Now, one of the differences is vassals in this game aren't just like called up. They have seats, which are demarcated on the map. So like this has a sigil with this eagle on it, and there's a sigil there. So if like this location was taken by the opposition, you couldn't call up those vassals. So that's a little bit different. I'm not going to be using the thing where you put the service markers on there. I don't quite feel confident enough to have to manage that as well right now. And then this one, his vassal marker is here, so he can legally call this guy in. But as you can see, with all of these markers that are going to be placed, there are going to be times where some of your vassals are not going to be loyal to you anymore, not going to be able to raise up. So that will affect play. So that's one of his two, and that takes him to 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm going to wait on him for now. And then they're going to stop there because we have this call to arms, which will only be done by the Ghibellines. So call to arms, if a side can and opts to declare call to arms, Guelphs and Ghibellines may, so we know that the Ghibellines are only going to gather. That side's unbesieged lords may use their command to march towards its leading city without entering any unbesieged or unbypassed enemy stronghold or for locales with lords in them. So basically you could call all of your forces together. So there's only one guy and he is in Siena, but if they had another one over here, they could have him march for free up and kind of concentrate their forces. So that's the first thing they could do. They're going to ignore that. Commander. That side's commander may disband. The commander may then immediately muster from anywhere on the calendar to his leading city. So anywhere on the calendar, doesn't matter. They can muster immediately into Siena. Easy. I don't know if they got to pay him for this. Because podestas have special muster, so they may have to pay him, and if so, they won't be able to. But I don't think that will be the case with this one. I'll double check that in a second. But normally, let's say, regardless of paying him, let's say we already paid him if we got to, whatever. They can, from anywhere on the calendar, they can just, boom, call him in. Then they have this thing called the commune. If the commander is in his leading city, even if he's besieged, that side may muster the commune with the Kurosia, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I'll explain it when I show it to you, and any of their Sistieri or Terzi rolls without having to roll. So let me show you that now. So basically each side has this special cylinder that has the same flag as their commander and always stays with the commander, I believe. But it is basically like the massed sum of the city of the Ghibelline forces. It's just the massed army. And it counts as one for command cards. So if you play a command card that activates Siena, you activate the both of them. You don't have to worry about that. They have a separate mat, and I don't know if you have to feed them separately or not, or if it just feeds from, if it counts in Siena's food. But the big thing about it is, while they are the same for those things, they are separate for sieges. So here in Montosino, they can besiege this place and add siege markers because this does count as 2 cylinders and it's a 2-size city. So they would be able to do that. So a very interesting mechanic that is very different from some others in the series. So we're going to pull out Siena, and we're going to pull out the commune here. And let me grab this special piece. This here, it is the Crocchio. I'm Crocchio. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. Crocchio maybe. But it is like what I was reading in the rules was basically these towns would bring out, these cities would bring out like an altar with a cross and all of this stuff on it and a priest, and it would be used to hold services, mass before or after a battle. So they provide forces, but they also can help you in recovery after battles to make sure less people get routed. The thing about it is, if it's ever captured, it's worth 2 victory points to your opponent. It's a permanent gain of 2. So I haven't talked about that, but knights, which count for these, I believe, as well as the Ritter. So the normal knight pieces, I believe these count as well as knights. If they're captured, which means in the sack, if they retreat, so on and so forth, they can be placed in this little box here. And then at the end of each turn, you can pay to get them out. And if you do, they immediately go into your forces. So that's kind of nice. You're paying coin to bring forces directly into your lords, regardless of whether they're besieged or not. But if you don't do it, let's say you don't have the coin or you choose not to, then you're going to go through this treachery stuff, which we haven't gotten through yet. Basically, some of these towns may flip. They're going to give your opponent treachery cards. Like, you don't want to leave those in there because these people are incredibly vengeful. It's the one thing to draw from this game. So they have, in this commune, they have this as well as these other pieces called the terzo, and they can be mustered alongside to add more. And let me see about if you have to pay for any of that or anything. That my side may muster his commune with its Corocchio and any terzi with no rolls. Okay. So this is going to give him 1, 2. To start off with. And then these are all the same, these terzi. And let me make sure we can bring all of them in, because I don't know if they have things that are in areas that they're not allowed to recruit in. It doesn't look like it. And it also may be that these aren't on the map. But it looks like they're cool. So let's say they have 2, 4. So that's actually 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I don't know if they eat together or what, but I think I'm going to call up 2 of them just to be safe. So that's going to be 2 of these, 2 armigieri, and then was it a militia? No. These guys. These are like serfs from the other games, and they're not very strong. But they can fight, so that's something. So there you go. That's that done, the commune. And then allies. One lord may use his lordship, or that side may muster a lord without a roll. So if they could bring in Provenzano if they wanted, which isn't a terrible idea. Or someone can use their lordship. I think we're okay on the lordship. I think they're going to bring in Provenzano without a roll, and he can muster here. The reason they want to do that is because they want to send Siena with the commune down to one of these locations and send these 2 guys off somewhere else, so that they can tackle 2 at the same time. So Provenzano will come in as well. And obviously he can't muster. But there's a lot to do here. I've still got to place all of these service markers, place assets and stuff like that. But with that call to arms done, that is it for this phase. So the call to arms is over. And we'll go into the campaign where we actually stack the decks and play the game. So a long intro into this one, but it should give you an idea of how call to arms works, and then you could see a little bit more in practice what this commune piece does. But that is a call to arms, and the levy phase. Okay, counters are placed, decks are built. We are going to go into the levy phase, or sorry, the campaign phase now. Flip the marker over. We're in winter to start with, so it's a very cold season where there's not a lot of movement. This is pretty traditional. So we're going to have only 4 command cards apiece, which is pretty limited. So let's go ahead and flip Guelphs first. Cole is going to be up to go. So he has a command of 2. He already has a provender. So, and he only eats 1. So he's going to go, he only has 1 cart as well. So he's going to move 1. He's going to stop here and place a siege marker. Now, I didn't know this,
I thought you had to have the number of lords equal to the size of a city in order even to start a siege. But now you can start a siege always and have one, even if you don't have enough lords. So I thought you needed 2 lords to besiege a 2-level city. You can have 1 lord and still start a siege. You just can't add any more. That won't be the case, though, for Cole because he has war engineers. So that ends his move. He's done. And he eats a provender. Gone. And now we flip the Ghibellines. Sienna. So this does count as 1 unit for everything, pretty much. The Podestà and the Comune. So the crazy part, I don't know if you can see it down here, but the Comune has 4 cards. Sienna has 2, so they can carry up to 6 provender, which is crazy. You're going to be playing this game and be like, they can do that? That's crazy. It's like the rest of the normal games, like the rest of the other games in the series, but on steroids, so much of this game. So they're gonna eat 2 apiece because they're at 11. You combined all of their units together when counting for this. So they had better first get some supplies. So they can supply here, but I don't think they can reach this other seat. I don't know if they can or not because I don't know if they can trace through enemy territory. The commands are all the same as far as I know. They have not changed. I think that's kind of like part of the inherency of the series is the commands. So let's take a look. To a stronghold, route source no enemy unless besiege or bypass. Yeah, so they can't reach this seat here. So they can supply for 1. And they can forage. Since it's winter, though, they're at a friendly stronghold, so they can add a provender for that. Meh. They could do that, grab 1, and then move down because they're not going to be laden. So they'll forage for 1 because they're at a friendly stronghold, and if they could always supply as well, so it doesn't matter. That'll give them 3 total. And then their other one, they're going to march. So they're going to go down this road and then along this track. So they intersect. You always treat it as a track if you're using multiple forms of transportation. So they're going to march down here to this rebellious city in the south. This is Montalcino. And they are going to lay siege to Montalcino. So the overall victory points right here are 10 for the Guelphs in purple and 9 for the Ghibellines. The thing about this is that half of these ravage markers rounding up are going to go away at the end of it. So at the last turn of spring and the last turn of autumn, you're going to remove half of ravaged markers. So that's 3 points of theirs right there. They're going to lose, let's see, there's 6 of them, so they're going to lose 3. So 1.5 points is going to be gone from that, and they're already down a point. So they're going to need to come in here and wipe out some of these victory point markers. So that is their move. They'll eat 2 because they have a lot of forces. Let me put down that little feed marker as a reminder. Cool. And then we'll go back, Cole again. So he can place another besiege marker or another siege marker. It says this Lord's siege adds marker to any size stronghold. So that means he could be doing this to Pisa, which is crazy. So he'll add another siege. That takes up his whole act. Well, first, I guess it takes up the whole action, though, to do that. Yeah, he needs food. So I guess he will have to supply because he can't forage here because it's winter. So he'll supply back. He has a single cart to do that with. So he could supply twice because he has 2 actions. And he's not going to move. So he'll supply twice, and he doesn't actually eat anything because he didn't move.
So there you go. And that'll be his action. Now back over here, Giordano. He is going to march, and he's unladen, but he's going to go off the roads. So he's going to go 1. He has no food, though, to start with. I think that's correct. So he's going to have to get some food as well. Here's that George B. McClellan simulator again. So he has 3 command. That's okay. He can supply for 1, but he's going to eat 2. So he has to supply twice and only gets to move once. I hope I put 2 Giordano cards in here. I think I did. So he'll supply twice. I'll give him 2. And then he'll march with the other one, which will then eat the 2 food that he's got. And now back over here. One thing I always tell people about this series is it's pretty go, go, go once you get the cards down. Cole again, all 3 of his cards in a row. So now he's got the food. He's going to besiege. He's going to do the siege action, which he can do because of his special ability or his capability. And that will take a food. So obviously he's done. You only have 3 of each card. So he's done, but next turn he's going to be positioned to maybe do another siege action and then roll for surrender, which is what he'd like to do because otherwise you're going to have to do a sack and then it's going to be ruined, and I'm not sure if they want to do that or not. They're not opposed to it, but okay, so Cole is done. That was easy. Provenzano, he's going to have to eat. Now he's got 1, so now he can go 1, 2. 1, 2. And this is Montepulciano. And that will place a siege marker. There you go. And he'll have to eat a food because he marched. Now back over to here, and I wonder what it's going to be. It's got to be Firenze. Could be a pass, I guess. But so now Firenze has food already. He's stocked up. He wants to, because there's a couple of options. He could take these roads down to the southeast and try and fight those 2 that are there, because the Comune is was loaded. But so is Giordano, honestly. There's 4 knights going to be in this stack over here, so neither of them are pretty. The thing about this scenario is that you're going to have to eventually go over the line, because if you just let them, the Ghibellines can just come down here and pick off all your victory points, and you'll lose. So they're going to have to do something. The other option is to come west and wreak some havoc over here, which both of them sound equally as interesting as the other. I think they're going to march because they're going to get a lord that comes in up here. Some of the lords start off map. They don't start off map, but they come from off map. So they're going to have a guy come from Lombardy in Bologna. So, and then they have Luca who's up here. But that's not going to be the very end of the game. They're going to need to move his marker, which you can do. You'll see that probably next turn. So a guy come down here, a guy down there. So let's go this way. So he's unladen, so he can take his first march along roads for free. So that's no actions. And then he can go 1, 2. And that'll only cost him 1 provender because he's running with 4 forces. So pretty easy there. Giordano again. He's got no food. He can supply twice, though, because he's got 3 carts. There's only 1 distance. So he's going to supply twice and then march down here, and he'll immediately eat that food. So now they've got enough to continue the siege here. They're already sieging here, and the war engineers are at work in Poggio Benizio. So that is it. For those of you who have never played this game before, that's all you do. You just flip the cards, do a couple of actions, and go. It's a really quick back and forth. Where the game gets slogged down a little bit, not in a bad way, but where like the meat of the time taken up really is in the beginning. And then once you get these pieces out, I mean, if you're fighting over and over and over again, it can take a while. But really, once you get into these cards, you can fly through this pretty quickly. So, into the campaign, grow, we don't do that. Ransom, there are no Ghibelline knights or Guelph knights that are captured. Repair, each town and city with 3 or 4 siege markers would lose 1. So that's why they stopped at 2 there. Obviously, couldn't have been more anyways. Waste, each Guelph and Ghibelline lord discards 1 asset or this lord card if he has more than any 1 asset type or more than 1 card. So the only thing that's confuses me about that is in the rules it says as compared to other games, the asset limit in this game is 16. I don't really know what that means. That means you can only have 16 assets out at a time, or does waste only happen if you've got more than 16 assets? I don't think that's the case. I think you can just maybe have 16 assets. But let's say that one's the case, they'd have to discard a coin, a card, or a provender. They'd have to discard one of these, which they would get rid of the card because that one's the least useful of those. Once again, card, coin, and he's actually okay. So we'll do that. I'll do that off screen so I can look it up and make sure I'm doing it right. Then we go on to the next levy. So that's a full of one of the 3 turns. Spring, we're going to have 7 cards now. So that is going to really open things up. And you're going to see a lot of movement from the Ghibellines here because they need to get a move on in this medium length scenario.